Every morning, Mark would step outside his neat suburban home, coffee in hand, and admire the lawn he'd spent years perfecting. But one morning, that piece shattered, muddy tire tracks sliced right across his grass. He froze. Then he saw it, a shiny silver SUV reversing straight over his lawn again. Behind the wheel was the infamous HOA Karen, a woman known for her rules. And for believing none applied to her. Mark waved for her to stop, but she rolled down her window with a smug smile and said, "You should move your lawn away from the road." That one sentence replayed in Mark's head all day. He reported her to the HOA, but they brushed it off. "Karen's been here 20 years. The president said, maybe let it go." But Mark couldn't. He'd built that lawn with his own hands. The next morning, he found her SUV parked half over his grass again. This time, the tire marks led straight to his heart, literally crushing the flower bed planted in memory of his late wife. Something inside him shifted. If the HOA wouldn't stop her, maybe it was time he handled it his way. Mark decided to start civil. He knocked on Karen's door, holding a photo of the destroyed flowers. "Please," he said calmly, "just drive around the lawn. I'll even widen the driveway." Karen looked at the photo, then laughed. "This is why people like you shouldn't live in HOA neighborhoods," she said, slamming the door. Mark stood frozen, her words echoing in his head. He felt humiliated, not just by her, but by an HOA that refused to protect him, so he took photos, printed dates, and gathered proof of every incident. When he presented it at the next HOA meeting, Karen acted shocked. "He's lying," she said. "Those could be anyone's tire marks." The board nodded. "We can't accuse a resident without witnesses." That night, Mark sat alone, staring out his window at the faint glow of Karen's SUV headlights turning into her driveway. She smirked as she passed his home and yes, drove right over his grass again. Mark whispered to himself, "All right, Karen. You want to play games? Let's make it interesting." Mark spent the next few days researching. He couldn't break any laws, couldn't damage her property, but he could protect his. He visited a local garden supply store and smiled when he found what he needed, a set of harmless, retractable motion sprinklers designed to scare off raccoons. Perfect. He installed them just beneath the soil line, invisible but ready. He called it Plan Green Justice. That night, he tested them. The sprinklers shot up with a hiss and drenched the lawn in seconds. It worked perfectly. The next morning, he saw Karen's SUV inching closer. Then, swoosh! A burst of icy water sprayed directly up, soaking her windshield. Her car swerved, horn blaring, as she screamed from the driver's seat. Mark watched from his porch, pretending to sip his coffee. Karen jumped out, dripping wet, shouting about faulty irrigation systems. But he wasn't done. He'd planted small solar cameras too, catching everything in crisp detail. He smiled evidence at last. But he also knew. Karen wouldn't stop. Not yet. The next evening, a letter appeared in Mark's mailbox. Notice of HOA violation, unauthorized lawn fixtures. Karen had filed a complaint against him. The irony made him laugh. He attended the HOA hearing, presenting his footage. The moment the board saw Karen's SUV plowing through his grass and getting sprayed by sprinklers, the room went silent. Karen's jaw dropped, but instead of apologizing, she doubled down. "This is harassment," she cried. "He's targeting me." The board hesitated until Mark calmly said, "Then maybe you should stop driving on my property." Even the HOA president couldn't argue with that. Karen stormed out, humiliated. For a few days, things were peaceful. Mark's lawn finally stayed perfect, and his mornings returned to calm. But then, late one night, he heard it, the crunch of tires again. He looked out and saw her SUV parked halfway across his lawn, with the sprinklers mysteriously ripped out. That's when Mark realized she wanted a war. Mark didn't lose his temper. Instead, he printed the photos, compiled timestamps, and filed an official property damage complaint with the county. Then, at the next HOA meeting, he stood up and played a video for everyone. Karen sneaking onto his lawn in the middle of the night, ripping up sprinklers and laughing to herself. The room gasped. Karen tried to speak, but the president stopped her. "You've crossed a line, Karen," Mark calmly added, "and since my property line was damaged, I'll be billing her for repairs." The HOA couldn't defend her anymore. Karen's face turned pale. "You can't do this," she said softly. But the board voted unanimously she'd pay fines for damage, and her parking privileges were suspended. Mark walked home that night under the streetlights, feeling a strange mix of relief and pity. He didn't want revenge, just peace. But he couldn't shake the feeling. Karen wasn't done yet. 2 weeks later, Mark returned from work to find something unbelievable. Karen's SUV was once again parked across his lawn, only this time, it was stuck. Deep tire ruts dug into the mud. She tried to drive over during a rainy day and got trapped. Mark almost laughed out loud. Instead of yelling, he simply called the local towing company. "Private property tow," he said calmly. When the tow truck arrived, Karen ran out screaming, "You can't touch my car." The driver pointed to the sign Mark had legally installed: "Private driveway, unauthorized vehicles will be towed." Her face went pale as her precious SUV was lifted and driven away. Mark recorded it all, silent, that night. The neighborhood group chat exploded. Photos of the tow spread fast. For once, Karen didn't reply. The HOA president privately messaged Mark, "Consider this matter closed. You did everything by the book." Finally, it was over. Or so he thought. A few days later, Karen showed up on Mark's porch. No yelling. No anger. Just a quiet sigh. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she said. "You reminded me what boundaries mean." She even offered to pay for the lawn repairs herself. Mark was stunned. Maybe she'd learned something after all. They shook hands, and for the first time, she drove away using the road, not the grass. The lawn healed over the following weeks, green and bright once more. Mark finally felt peace again. But every morning, as he looked at that patch of grass, he remembered one thing: standing your ground doesn't mean fighting back in anger. Sometimes, it's about using patience, proof, and persistence, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you loved the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.